All right, so for this video, I want to show you a bit about OSnaps and why they're important. And you can't talk about OSnaps and SmartTrack without talking about your seaplanes. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to finish this model. I'm going to go ahead and grab this rectangle that I've drawn here, and I'm going to go extrude that thing. Pull it up 3.5 inches so the panel size is good. And then I'm going to move my seaplanes because I'm going to draw on the surface of this thing. So I'm going to go back to seaplanes, set seaplane to object, click on that. Now what it should do when you click on the face of an object is it should try to assign that seaplane to that face. But you'll notice my origin is actually in the middle. I'd like this point that's hidden here where the green and red lines intersect. I'd like it to be down in this corner. I just feel better when the stuff is in the top right or that first quadrant. So I'm going to go set seaplane origin. And again, I'm going to try to select this. Now, I don't need midpoint. And it feels like by the grid snap it's in that right place, but I'm going to turn grid snap off, and then I can really put it anywhere I want. So what I'm going to do is select this intersection, OSnap, and then it's going to tell me when I get really close to that point. Is that what you want? Yep, I want that intersection. So all that did was move my origin so you can see my green and red lines will meet perfectly right here in the corner. That last step is not necessary, but it's something I really like. I just like organizing my workspace. Next thing we want to do is draw a circle. I have grid snap turned off. I have the intersection OSnap turned on. And by default, it's going to draw whatever I want. So let's say I make a circle. And I don't intersect with anything. It's going to draw that geometry right on the surface. Okay, like we talked about in the seaplanes video. But if I have some of these other OSnaps turned on, it's going to be connecting to some of these other pieces. So like if I turn on the intersection OSnap and I start drawing a circle again, I can start on the surface, but then if it intersects with something over here, look how it's actually moving that circle around. Okay. So OSnaps can override any of the other things that you've set up. Let's talk a little bit about SmartTrack. I want to draw a circle that is horizontally centered, right? It's a distance of 2.5 inches in. Okay. Unfortunately, it's not also vertically centered, so that one's going to take a little bit more counting. But it's horizontally centered, which is really nice. So I could use an OSnap when I create my circle to say, hey, grab onto that center point. So let me show you how to do that. If my circle happened to be centered, let's select midpoint. If my circle happened to be centered both horizontally and vertically, let me show you how easy it is to make sure you put the circle in the center. Now SmartTrack is turned on, so I'm going to go up. SmartTrack, when it's turned on, it creates these little red points. Oh, that midpoint, that's important to you. I see that in your OSnap. So let me create a guideline for you. I'm going to go over to the midpoint of the other side, and notice when you get in the middle, it shows you the intersection of those two. So if my diagram had it centered both vertically and horizontally, we would be good to go. But notice my problem. Do you see it? Right? With the grid snap and those OSnaps on, it looked fine from the front. Right? You look like you're right on, but if I click down and make my circle 1.5 divided by 2, it draws a circle, it just puts it on the wrong face. So you got to be really careful when you're using OSnaps. And so much of this using any 3D modeling software is moving, rotating, panning, zooming, getting in, moving it around so that you're really comfortable with the view. And Rhino is awesome because in the middle of drawing a shape, so I'm going to start drawing a circle, I can even click down and set the center point. I can still move around. I can zoom in and out. I can pan. I can rotate. It's really about setting up your workspace to get a good view. So what I want to do is I want to turn on grid snap, and I'm going to turn off my OSnaps for a minute. So I want to draw a guideline because I know that the center of this circle actually has to come down 2 inches from the top. And because I've rotated around and I have my seaplane right in the right spot, I can use the grid lines to count down 2 inches really easily, right? It's going to be right there. So what I'm going to do is draw a rectangle, and I want to grab this first corner, and I'm going to come down a distance of 2 inches. So there's 1 inch, there's 2 inches. I'm just counting grid lines. I canceled that one too early. So I'm just using grid snap right now. I'm going to hold Option to make sure that there are no other snapping things turned on. So that means by default, it's going to draw that rectangle on that surface. Okay. Now I can go in and draw a circle using my snaps. I want to orient it so I make sure that it grabs the midpoint on this front surface and then is going to come down and intersect the midpoint of that surface, or that line right there. Now notice as I drag around, it's trying to do other snapping, but I don't want it to. All I need it to do is center on my circle. So what I'm going to do is hold Option right now, and I don't have to deal with any of those other things, like all these other crazy snaps that move that circle around in space. So I'm just holding Option to temporarily turn off my OSnaps. Okay. Let's go ahead and actually just turn them all off. I'm not holding Option right now because what I want to do is actually let go of the Option key so I can type in the radius of this thing, which is going to be 1.5 divided by 2. Okay, so it's drawn perfectly with only one horizontal guideline. I can go ahead and get rid of that rectangle now. I don't need it. I can go ahead and take that and extrude it. I'm going to go Solid Tools, Extrude Curve. Notice I pre-selected it, so it asks me fewer questions because it says, oh, you're trying to extrude that thing, and it skips ahead. I can do the same thing with Boolean difference. So I'm going to click the object I want to keep, click on Boolean difference, and then it immediately jumps to the second question. It says, which one do you want to subtract with? Which are you cutting off? What's your cutting object? Select that, hit return, and I got it. One last thing to do to this geometry is to put that chamfered edge on. It's actually already set up for 1 inch, so I'll go ahead and select that side and select that side. Oh, shoot. I'm sure you've done this before. You select something you didn't mean to. I think if you hold Command and click on it again, you can deselect that side. Okay, that looks good. Those are just the two sides it should chamfer. Hit return to get a preview. Hit return to accept. And then the last thing I'm going to do is mirror this thing. Now you can reset your C-plane before you do this, or you can just leave it put if you're careful with your OSnap. So let me show you. I'm going to type the mirror command. I do want to turn on my OSnaps, and I want to make sure that I have midpoint selected. So first thing is, what do I want to mirror? There's my object. Now I want to mirror across this midline right here. So with SmartTrack and the midpoint OSnap turned on, I can click down on there. And then I can go midpoint on the other side. Now what's wrong with my mirroring? I actually wanted to rotate it around the other way, didn't I? So notice what happens with your X and Y axis here. If I don't reset my C-plane, it's going to assume that I'm rotating in the other direction. So I'm going to undo that change. I'm going to go back. This is the perspective view, and so by default, it should be C-planes world top. Now when I use the mirror command and select my geometries and hit return, and I go look for my midpoint, it's going to rotate around the z-axis that way. So I'm going to move around so I can see the midpoint on the other side, and I got it. So there's our object being intentional with using our OSnaps and our C-planes.